Welcome to Chapter 10. In this chapter we actually discuss some Qt related technologies. Let's start off with how do we store settings without creating a database and without writing our own file functions. So I have BigProject from Chapter 10 open, and I am going to run this on the desktop so you have a little bit better chance to see what's going on. So with that, let me launch it. There we go. Start up in the bottom corner. So let me move this up into a little bit better spot. And you can see right now we're configured to get our weather conditions from Dallas, USA. And we're set for 27 and 13 degrees min and max temperature. And you may be wondering, why didn't the settings come up with London, UK like it used to? Why are our units in Fahrenheit, and why those min and max temperatures? Well, that has to do with our configuration file. So let's take a look at that. I'm cheating a little bit here by repeating an old command. Remember, our configuration file is stored on a Linux machine, is stored in .config of the user's directory. And we have Packt there, which if you look over here, no, wrong file. If you look over here, it's the organization name. And then we have BigProject, which you look over here, you'll see is the application name. So this is for Linux and some other POSIX systems. Windows uses the system registry, so it's a little bit different. And you'll also notice that once we look at the file, which I catted here, our thermostat group settings, we have a max temperature of 27, a min of 13. For our weather, we have a location of Dallas, USA, and our units are Fahrenheit. You might be wondering where the API key is. Well, it's not there. I specifically deleted it from this file so that you can use your own key and not overload mine. Alright, so let's make a few changes here. I actually think 27 for temperature inside a room is a bit on the warm side. So I'm going to say 21. Notice when I typed the 2, this went to -1. Why? Because we enforce a 3-degree difference between the two. And then here I am going to say I really want to keep that tight. I know it has to be 3 degrees, but I'll be a little bit nicer. I'll say 16. Oh, 16 degrees. And for our units, I love to confuse people. Let's display the current weather conditions where we're in our location in terms of Kelvin. And just for fun, and because it's easy for me to type, I will type Buffalo. If my fingers work, USA. Alright, so I've made these changes. Oops. We'll go here. We see it now says Buffalo, USA. Now let's take a look at our configuration file again. If you notice here, back to settings, our max is 21, our min is 16, location is Buffalo, and our units are Kelvin. So we have successfully stored and retrieved information from a settings file. Alright, I'm going to close this up because we won't be needing that any longer. I'm going to clear this display, this console window. Yeah, so we can move on to our next topic, which is dbus. And in the text, I actually talked about how you can brute force create a dbus application in Qt. It's really not too hard, and I sort of wanted to run that for you. So we'll switch back here. And we will change our project to the brute force project. Make that active. We're going to be running this on the host. As I said, we're running these on the host. It's a little bit easier to observe things. And I'm actually going to start up. It's a little bit different from the text. I'm going to start up a monitor on the host right here. Oops. I am having a hard time typing this morning. All right. So we can see everything happening on the session bus. You can see there's a lot of stuff happening right now. And now I'm going to actually run the code. And as soon as I did, the window opens up. But just if you look just before we started, there was a big flurry of activity over here. Let's go up and take a look at that. So the first part over here is our actual request for it. Show me everything on the bus. And you can see that request got answered. And then you can actually see our ping right here. With this much stuff going on the bus, it's sort of useless. I'm going to stop it. Oops, that's right there. So we can scroll up. Because there's so much other traffic. We could actually give a regular expression to dbus monitor. But we can actually see we're sending and receiving our ping. We're actually getting all the things on the session bus. So with that, I'm going to close this application. Yes, close the window. It says it crashed, but if you remember that code, it basically never returned once it started. It just kept doing it. So I'm actually going to now, let's go back and look at our dbus application. Close this. Close this. So we want to make it so that the remote GUI, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. We want to add dbus to BigProject. So it becomes it sits on the dbus and we can actually see it from the dbus. Might be handy. So I'm going to need that. And over here, move that there. Actually, I did want it on the other side. I'm sorry. Excuse me. I am going to turn on the view of our Raspberry Pi. And over here, I'm going to, which you can't see, I'm going to set our active project to BigProject. You might be able to see that changed here. And I am going to make sure we are configured to run on the Raspberry Pi. And I'm going to launch it. Give it a second. There we go. We actually can see it running now. Now if you look here, you'll see the setting is Fairport USA. I'll make it a little bit bigger so you can see things easier. Again, we're already in Q settings. It's already up to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's going to go up to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a little bit on the warm side. For my taste, I prefer a little cooler. And what we really wanted to see is we wanted to see what happens when we look at the bus on the target. Do we see our traffic? So we're going to go monitor. We're going to look at the system bus because remember on the target we use the system bus because we don't really have a session. And we can see some messages that look interesting. So right here we got a message sent from a thermostat from the interface called Packt BigProject thermostat. And with the current temperature change, and it said 37.0793. Oh, sorry. Let's try it again. Actually, we have a second signal. Here we can see we have a change from the thermostat on the interface COM Packt BigProject thermostat. It's a current temperature changed message, and it says it was 36.9658, which does agree with our screen. So we can see the temperatures coming across. That is really good. So I'm going to do that. So we can see it, we get what we expect. Now, let's see if we can change the settings as we expect. So the first thing I am going to do, forgive me, it's just a little bit easier for me to not have to type these long lines. If you look in the screen, you'll see that up in our display we have a minimum temperature set of 30. And what I am going to do down here is I am going to set the min temperature through a debus message. I'm going to set it to 24. So I'm going to press enter, and we should see the screen from our project update. And there it goes. So let's try with our max temperature. Let's make our max temperature 42, which should cause some changes to some other things. Actually, we're at 40. Let's make it 35 so it's a little more obvious. And did you see the max temperature change? If you look there, you'll see that it now says 35 and 24. So we can do it both ways. We can get the data back. We can set it. We've tested it. It says that the current temperature is too hot, and last we looked, the temperature, the board sensor was sitting at 36, so it turned the cooling and the fan on in response to our temperature change. That looks pretty good. That looks pretty much like what we expect to see happening. Alright, so I'm going to go back to the main current data. And the next thing we wanted to do was show you the remote GUI. So we developed this web-based GUI, and which is right here. And we're going to start out by running this web-based GUI on the host. That way we can see what it looks like before we try to see it in a web browser. Oh, sorry. Do you remember what I did wrong? You're right, I didn't set this as my active project. I actually configured the wrong project. It sounds like something it shouldn't be hard, shouldn't be bad to do, but it's quite easy to do. Oh, I don't have it configured for running on the host. So I just reconfigured this remote GUI to run on the target. If I go down here, we'll see I can now run it on desktop. We're compiling the remote GUI. There we go. And there. So that's what it looks like on our desktop if we run it directly. Now what we really want to do is we want to run it on the target, but we don't want to replace BigProject. So we already have BigProject running over here. You see it there? Let me just make that up in the small corner so we can still see it's running. And here we have the QML application. But let's do a little fun here. We're going to go here, and we are going to build this for the Raspberry Pi. All right, it's already built. Now, I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to go up here, I'm going to click, and I'm going to say deploy. As we learned way back, I believe it was in chapter 2. May have been chapter 3. Actually, it's chapter 3. We learned we can deploy onto our target, which copies everything over but doesn't run it. So we're going to go back and use that because we don't want to stop BigProject from running. Okay. We look here. We can see where it was deployed to. Now, it's an interesting message here. No deployment action necessary skipping. What does that mean? That means it's already on the target. So, next, we're going to come over here, open up our target window, and we are going to where it deployed to. I'm actually going to execute. Now, if I do this, if I hit return here, it will try to compete with the display and for BigProject, and I don't know what's going to happen. Not good. That's all I can tell you. Won't be good. But we're going to add platform. This says we want to run it as a Web GUI application, so it's going to do all its display in Web GUI. It's going to be a virtual display, and it's going to be on port 8080. There we go. And, well, it doesn't look like much happened, but stuff did. So let me go up here, and I am going to bring in a Firefox window. Everybody's favorite web browser. Actually, it's a great web browser. And I'm going to look at and we're opening up our web interface in Firefox. Now, this is pretty much brute force. Seeing real world temperatures. I'm not truncating. So the GUIs look pretty much the same. I'm going to move this down here. I'm going to expand our interface a little bit. And just a little playing around with the rather crowded screen. Let's go look at settings again. Oh, first let's verify. Do the temperatures agree? On the screen we have of the target we have 373598, and here we have 3735976, which rounds to 98. Looks pretty good. Looks like we might have a small bug though. Let's look at our settings. Yeah, we have a small bug. We see our temperature is 35 here on the target, and we see that our temperature is 15. The reason being, and this is a minor thing, which we actually catch up on some of these things later, is that the temperature is being only transmitted when the settings are only being transmitted when they're changed. And so we just came up with some default temperatures. So I am going to use my little mouse, because quite honestly, these little touch buttons are small for me. And I'm going to change this to 45. And then I'm going to change this guy down here. Actually, I just changed it to 30. But you can see when I changed it to 30, both temperature changes were reflected here. Now, let me go click somewhere else, just to refocus the mouse. Now let's see what happens when we change it here. So I'm going to change this to 11. And you can see we're pretty much tracking. As I change it here, it changes almost instantly on the display. So, what have we shown? We have shown in this chapter we can save settings. We have shown that we can create a dbus interface. And by using that, we then use that dbus interface in BigProject to connect to a Web GUI application, or actually a Qt application written in QML, which outputs to Web GUI, and we then access that remotely through a web browser. Honestly, I think that's kind of really cool. But I have one more piece of coolness I wanted to show you. So let me close up Firefox. Let me close this up. Actually, I'll leave the Web GUI application running there. We don't really care that it keeps running. And I'm going to maximize the screen. We had talked about printing as the final thing we did in this chapter. So, back to my mouse. Where's my mouse? There's my mouse. Let's look at our menu. Let's export the history to PDF. All right, there, in ultra small size is a preview. This is actually a print preview. And instead of creating a new form, I just used the form we already had. We got our graph, which doesn't quite show well on the display, and we have our list of values. All right. Now what I want to do, I talk about this in the book, there's a little arrow here. I want to actually print this. I can only print to a file, and the output file will be interestingly enough, it doesn't matter what keyboard I am typing on today, I cannot type. Test.pdf. Scroll down here, we'll click print. Now, I'm going to shrink this back up. I'm done with that for the moment. And actually, I will actually force our Web GUI in the background. If you remember, in Linux, you can use Control-Z. I'll just put it in the background. And let's see if we got a new file. And there is test.pdf. Well, that's good. We can't see it there. So I'm going to come back over to, this is our host. All right. And now, through the magic of SCP, you might be wondering why I say Raspberry 01. That's the way this particular target is configured. In the book, you can use any name as long as you're consistent with whatever you call your target. And once again, I have to pull that so you can see it. So I'm going to, this command here is going to copy from the test PDF file over to the current directory. There we go. Now, let's take a look at it. Hang on, I will open that in another off-screen window. Give me 1 second. Actually, I'll do it here. And there, I open it in the off-screen window. You can see our actual report. It's on a piece of paper size. We can print that. So, anyway, that concludes our demonstration of the applications in Chapter 10. Hope you've enjoyed it, and I look forward to doing 2 more videos for Chapter 11 and Chapter 12. Thank you.